Two big bits of news this week, if we ignore the dramatics of the American election for just 1 second. First, the news of the vaccine, very promising, very exciting, but also a poll from YouGov which shows that only 7% of people want to go back to their offices full-time. Most of us want a blend of office and home working. Interestingly, men more interested in going back to the office than women, but those of us with 3 or more children more keen to go back than anyone else. I wonder why. Brilliant idea. Absolutely fantastic. The thing to take away from this is that remote and hybrid working is going to be with us for some time, even if we can manage the virus. And I've been talking to people over recent weeks about what it's like to start jobs in lockdown or since lockdown where you've not met your team in person. A couple of big themes come through. One is that once you are hired, it is so difficult to understand the social nuance, the jokes and the nods and the winks of groups that you've never met. You know, the kind of endless sort of joking around Andy who eats 2 pork pies for breakfast, and whether you're a part of that, whether you fully understand what the joke is and the point at which you can participate is really tricky. The second is the sheer volume of management time it takes to get someone established when you can't just say, oh, could you just show me this? Oh, this hasn't worked in the way I expected. Oh, which platform do you want to do this on? And somebody said to me that actually she needed to speak to her boss every single day for the first few weeks in order to be productive. But he just didn't have that kind of time free in his calendar. So that's a real challenge for leaders and managers and new recruits. And the third one is about networks. We know many of us have shrunk our networks since lockdown, but for people coming into organisations, even when they do onboarding and meet lots of people in different teams and wider groups, those connections diminish very quickly if they're not renewed and re-established. So there's a lot of time and effort into having a connection through the organisation. To think more in practical terms about hiring and onboarding in remote, I went to speak to 2 people who do this all the time. Let's hear what Domini and Upi have to say.
Hiring, it's about the process, it's about keeping it really succinct, knowing that you're going to have to do it all virtually, so expecting a different outcome from what you would in person. You're not going to get as much of a feel of who they are, but understanding that and being really clear with your questions, maybe even providing the questions before, because it's quite intimidating to have an interview over Skype where people don't normally do that. And then even going through the offer process, making sure that that is always being looped in, that you're giving feedback to everybody. That's where I'm seeing issues when it's all virtual. So I've been working on a lot of opportunities, but in continental Europe, and actually they work at a different rate. And their expectations of what's happening in lockdown is very different to what's happening here. So when you're interviewing candidates in different locations, the expectations and what's happening is very different, right? So some people are going to the office and that's the expectation there. Here, it's a completely different type of work.
I think what's interesting is that pre-COVID, only 12% of employees agree that their employer does a good job of onboarding. I think good onboarding does really start with the selection process. You know, pre-COVID, a face-to-face interview, you'd get a pretty good idea of the kind of culture of an organization by going into the office and, you know, is it really buzzy? Is it really quiet? What does it all look like? And I think companies have got a lot better at really showcasing themselves as an employer, what their brand is online, and being able to tell that story through social media so that candidates can really see if they'll be a good match for that company.
Another good example is like putting together a buddy system. So some companies are building in buddy systems so that when you get someone coming on board, then actually they have questions or something in the team, they're able to go straight to that person. You're thinking about what they need is individual for each employee, not giving everybody a blanket kind of this is what we're doing, and understanding that everybody's needs are nuanced.
First impressions really count. And very often the first impression a new joiner will get of a company is when the tech arrives. So make sure that the tech arrives when it's supposed to, you know, if a new laptop is being delivered. And once it has arrived, do try to make sure there is someone on hand in the IT department who can help get that laptop set up properly.
The key to virtual working is building trust. It's the trust equation. And the trust equation is built on various principles, but one of the principles is intimacy. So you need to create that. It's really hard to create virtually, but you can do that. So to create that understanding of who that person is. Once you understand that, you might know how they work.
Thanks, Domini. Thanks, Upi. Really practical stuff. We put it into a chart so you can share it or print it out if it's useful to you. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.